Good morning, good morning, good morning, everyone. Sorry, we had a momentary glitch in the background here. So sorry for that long musical interlude. Um, uh, Lovely Wednesday morning for you here in the city of Philadelphia. Supposed to be highs in something like the mid 50s today, so gonna be pretty warm out there, and looks like it's gonna get cloudy around midday. So just be aware of that, and welcome to the coffee break chat. Welcome to another Wednesday. Got a lot of stuff that happened this week. It's been a busy week. We're going to be talking, excuse me, talking about the Philly Proud Boys being charged in the DOJ investigation into the January 6th insurrection. We're going to talk about Mark Meadows being found in contempt of Congress, and we're going to talk about some investigations going on in Florida into the DeSantis administration and their basically hiding of data that could have mitigated some of the consequences of the pandemic. Hey, this could be good news. This could be the start of like what all the other countries that have had horrible leadership during this pandemic have done, and we could be actually seeing some consequences for our political leaders who decided to ignore it. But yeah, we have got some good special guests for you. Patti LuStoned, the Painted Mug Cafe, Linden Curhart, a queer Christmas Carol, which will be at the Painted Mug Cafe. And just real quick, first I wanted to get into one little thing. Philly students can now identify as non-binary in the school district system. Billy Penn is reporting. So I don't know. I think that's relatively good news. But here to talk about the Painted Mug and to talk about a queer Christmas Carol, I'm going to welcome to this screen Patty Lou and Linden Curhart. Please introduce yourselves, your pronouns, and what it is you do, starting with Patty Lou Stone.
Hi, I'm Patti LuStoned. Usually wear a lot more makeup than this. I use she and they pronouns interchangeably. I am one of the founding members of the Painted Mug Cafe. Right now, I am the head of the entertainment and community outreach committees. And I am also the managing director of the Hummingbirds Theater Troupe, which is the group that is producing A Queer Christmas Carol at the Painted Bug.
Awesome. And Linden, if you would please introduce yourself, your pronouns, and what it is you do.
I'm Linden Curhart. I use he, they pronouns. I am an actor and artistic contributor with the Hummingbirds, and I'm currently cast as Tiny Tim and the Ghost of Christmas Past in A Queer Christmas Carol at the Painted Mug.
Wow, that's double. That's some double duty, Tiny Tim and the Ghost of Christmas Past. Tell us a little bit about A Queer Christmas Carol, if you would please.
Absolutely. It is a new interpretation and, well, I guess, script write of Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol that focuses on queer narratives and community and has a deeply anti-capitalist message at its heart.
I don't know. Has Christmas Carol always been moderately anti-capitalist? Are you just making it more
Oh,
experience?
absolutely. We're just being loud about it.
Okay. Why the painted mug? And tell us a little bit about the painted mug.
So the Painted Mug Cafe started as an interest group. We started talking around February of this year, and a few of our venues where we performed before the pandemic are no longer with us. We lost Toasted Walnut, which was the only sapphic bar in town. We no longer have a lesbian bar in the city. the place where I got my first pageant title, Latage, above the Beaumont. They're no longer with us. They used to host drag and burlesque brunches and lots of events for singers. So a bunch of us realized that we needed more spaces, and just through some hard work and luck, we managed to end up with a building and start a venue, and we are going to be creating that space and filling that void ourselves. So when myself and my executive board for the Hummingbirds, which includes CJ Higgins, Quentin J. Alexander, and Wyatt Flynn, we were planning our season for 2021, 2022. We were trying to figure out, what do we want to do? Do we want to do Fringe? Do we want to do Theater Week? And we were just kind of brainstorming all of the ideas that we've had in mind over the past 5 years that never came to fruition. And we ended up doing one of our dream shows for Fringe. That was the House of Love. And A Queer Christmas Carol was something that we had kind of joked about for years and like dream casted ourselves in. So of course it was like an all gay cast from the jump. And when we were planning our season, we're like, you know what, let's go for it. Let's do A Queer Christmas Carol this year. And at that point in the summer, we didn't know where it was going to be, but it just ended up being the right timing for us to be the very first production at the Peanut Mug Cafe. Like I said, I was a founding member there as well. So I've been privy to all the conversations that we've been having and like when we will be ready. So we decided December was like a good soft target for us to have a space that's ready for events. And it's not the dream cafe that we want it to be yet, because that costs a lot of money. It costs a lot of money to buy an espresso machine. It costs a lot of money to build ramps. But we're like, we can't just sit on this property and wait for it to be perfect. We need to open the doors and start allowing people to create art here and have events and just start having community, because we really need that right now. We need to be able to have affordable, safe spaces for us to just gather.
Yeah, absolutely. I was just talking about this, tangentially about this topic with a fellow producer, Rick Lewis, and we were talking because he's looking for a space for, a big musical, 30 people on stage. You can't fit that, unfortunately, even in, some of the venues that you mentioned, and the number of venues has decreased both in just the small venues and in the larger venues. So like you can't rent out, the Prince became no rent out. There's the all the Center City theaters, basically filled their schedules, and it's just it's crazy out there. It's tough to, even if we want to do in-person events, it's tough to find a space. Especially a space that's open to just any type of production that's representative of the community of people that is the minority majority. But yeah, so.
Yeah, definitely. I know that several comedy theaters also closed in the past year. Good comedy theater in Chinatown, they're closed down. I believe the Philly Improv Theater is either closed or on a quiet hiatus. I'm not sure what they do because they're weird. But we want this space to be for everybody in the community. So we're not just sticking to like nightlife shows. Like it's not going to be just a drag and burlesque or cabaret event space. We have events coming up in January. We actually have a whole January calendar that's going to be announced this weekend with A Queer Christmas Carol. Our full events calendar will be announced, and we'll have open stage nights. We're going to have a sober karaoke day in the afternoon. We're going to have a comedy show. We're going to have just hangout days. We're going to have like a knitting circle and a tabletop game day, and hopefully grow even more from there. I got a message from somebody I didn't even know who was like, we have so many plant people in the community. Can we do a plant swap? And I'm like, yes, let's follow up in February.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
The Christmas Carol is going to be the first show at the space. What's it like being part of the first show to kick off a space, Linden?
Well, a lot of us, in addition to preparing for this show by, being in rehearsals and all of that, we've also been preparing to be in the space. I mean, we've been showing up for construction days and painting days and all that good stuff. And it's been really rewarding to kind of see the space come to being around us as we work on this show. And it feels vitally important to be a part of something like this and to be a part of sort of the inaugural launch of this space. And personally, as a disabled performer, it feels really good to be a part of the creation of a space that is prioritizing accessibility not only for its audiences, but also for its artists, which is incredibly rare. A lot of the time, those of us who deal with disabilities, particularly limited mobility, we are invited to observe but not participate. And it feels very good, very validating, and very important that there is a space for people like me, not only in the audience of the Painted Mug, but also on the stage.
Awesome, awesome, amazing. Um, I wanted to say, like this whole conversation brings to mind just kind of some of the conversations we've had on this show in recent weeks about what have the results of the pandemic been? What has the pandemic allowed for, created, in addition to, not just the pandemic itself, but also, the George Floyd protests, and I think this kind of acute awareness of community need and a community involvement is one of the, I guess, positives out of forcing everybody to be kind of focused locally suddenly. Um, I think that's really cool, and I'm really excited to see what the Painted Mug brings, and to I think it's a very valuable approach to these community needs. We all have community needs, and the sense of community has been waning in recent years, and so it's good to see that there are people trying to increase that. When can people see the Christmas Carol, and where is Painted Mug?
So the Painted Mug is located in the Point Breeze area of South Philly, very close to the Broad and Snyder stop on the Broad Street line. It is at 15th and Jackson, right around there. And we're actually sold out for all of our live performances. We're a 3-night only show, but we have unlimited amounts of digital streaming tickets available. We're going to try our best to open a few more seats for our live shows, but we have to, since this is a brand new space, we literally have to see how many chairs we can fit in the space comfortably and safely, given, safety measures for COVID. But we have full availability to watch our digital stream that's going to be captioned. I'm going to spend all day Monday editing that together and captioning that and releasing that on Monday evening.
Awesome.
Yeah, and we will also have a day where people can come see the space on January 1st. We're having an open house where people can come by the space, come get a cup of coffee, grab a snack, hang out, talk to the team about, what's going on, what we're working on, and what our goals are.
Where can folks get the streaming tickets?
They can get that through any of our social medias. We have our links pretty readily available everywhere on Facebook, Instagram. We even have a Twitter now, but we're at like Linktree /Hummingbirds. We're also on Ticket Leap. That's where our ticketing platform is. Or you can go right to our website, which is just humandbards.com.
So, speaking of in-person events, it's been an interesting fall and or now looking into spring. Also, Tui said, "Hi, I love you, folks." So,
We love Tui.
uh,
Tui's also
Hi,
in the
Tui.
show.
so, and uh, it's been an interesting fall, and looking into spring, it's become a weird spring for in-person events. I know you guys know this because you work in production, and but some of our audience doesn't actually work directly in production. Just to let you all know, about October, everybody and their brother suddenly wanted to do a live and in-person event.
Oh yeah.
And I think everybody that's involved in production in any sort of way got about 15 phone calls. Hey, can you work on this thing next week? I don't know why people didn't plan this out a little bit further, but yeah. Um, so that's how our fall has gone. And now looking at Omicron and looking in towards January, I've had 4 bookings cancel. And I have 2 bookings still. It's a yet still a weird combination. But to your point, with the painted mug, we have to do events in person safely, and there's still limited availability for seating. Um, do you, I find so through the course of the pandemic, uh, for my production company, I kind of found that doing hybrid events really opened the doors of accessibility and made accessibility a lot easier. Um, do you think that we can convince producers to constantly keep doing hybrid events, or do you think that this is just going to go away eventually when people are doing in-person events, like pretty regularly again?
Well, I can't speak for any other producers, and I know that there are occasionally licensing issues when it comes to providing online access to shows.
Mhm.
But the Hummingbirds have decided this year that after the last year of the pandemic, we did 3 productions of our digital hashtag Nightlife Renaissance Fair show, which was headed by Quentin and CJ. And we just decided that there was no reason for us to not make all of our shows live and digital. And we did that with our fringe show, The Houses of Love, and it was hugely successful. We ended up doubling our profits pretty much because we got so many sales on that digital recording. And you just never know who's going to hear about the show that you're putting up from anywhere in the internet and decide, hey, this show is affordable because we do pay what you can models. So we have tiered options as well as a just type in what number you can afford option. And our digital streams are captioned as well. So, and then we've had people who came to the Hazards of Love who didn't realize that, it was a bar and that people would be able to like pull their mask down and take their drink of their beverage, and that made them uncomfortable. So we said, hey, I'm going to send you the link to the digital stream so that you don't have to miss out on this opportunity so your ticket doesn't go to waste. And having that flexibility with people is, I think, so important. And I'm of the mindset that I'm like, if our tiny little company that operates on like no money, we operate on like $1,000 that just kind of refills itself and we pay our performers as much as we can. But if we can do it with how little we have, then everybody should be able to do it. Like if you're doing theater as your full-time job, why aren't you putting the effort into making a digital stream more accessible? I have a full-time job and I'm going to spend my whole day on Monday making this digital stream accessible because it's important to me.
Well, I mean,
And if
to
maker, you should.
to be fair, digital streaming, hybrid events are not like it's not cheap to do it at a professional level. You do basically double what you need to do as far as from a production standpoint.
Absolutely.
And your budget goes up, but it's also worth it. It's worth it. I think just even if there was no benefit in the form of ticket sales, I think it's worth it just to make it accessible to folks who can't otherwise make it to your in-person event.
I
Here, here.
absolutely agree.
Yeah, I don't know why that's a thing. Anyway,
Yeah. I literally filmed The Hazards of Love on my iPhone, and I filmed it one night and put it up the next day after
And
captioning.
it looked beautiful.
I mean,
Yeah, because we did a good job.
yeah, I mean, like my company, we just did a completely virtual U.S. Africa Business Summit where we had, the presidents of like 18 African countries and, people from the State Department and former vice presidents and stuff on, all coming in, to an environment that we created. And normally they do this every year. Normally they either fly to Africa or they fly to the U.S. Why continue doing that? You couldn't
Yeah.
do it this year, but now I think we've proved the concept, at least for them, that you can do this in a digital environment.
Yeah, I totally think that people need to continue using the digital tools that we realized we had this whole time. And like, why make things more difficult than they need to be unless it's for a good cause?
Yeah.
Yeah, those of us within the disabled community, as we're seeing this rise of in-person shows incorporating digital showings into their runs, so many of us who are mobility impaired or who otherwise have any kind of disability that often prevents us from going to physical show spaces to participate in especially queer art are kind of sitting back like, well, yeah, this was kind of always an option, but good on you for doing it now, I guess.
Yeah, I hate to say it. I mean, because we did live streaming. My company did live streaming before the pandemic, and yeah, it was an option before the pandemic. It's just not, the pandemic did make everything a little bit more accessible as far as from a production standpoint, as far as, the technology rapidly stepped up. There's now, like 8 providers of live streaming distribution versus there used to be one or two. And prices came down drastically, instantaneously, because people realized that they could provide these services for not much money and not a lot of increase in technology need. But yeah, I find it fascinating how quickly, um, basically, I have a cell phone, and that can take place of a whole entire what used to be a production van for a news organization. I can now just hook my camera to my cell phone and live stream to my channels on the internet. And I can live stream to like 18 destinations all at once. It's crazy, but that's neither here nor there. Sorry. That kind of stuff fascinates me anymore, and I would spend a lot of time on it, but yeah. Um, so, the in-person and hybrid things, obviously, we're doing a lot more of them because of the pandemic. And I wanted to bring everybody's attention to the University of Florida launching an investigation into reports of pressure to destroy COVID research. This was reported on by the Gainesville Sun, and in the University of Florida, obviously located in Florida, in Gainesville, released a 274-page faculty committee report that includes claims of pressure to destroy and barriers to publish COVID-19 data. This came directly from the government of Florida, the state government, and I find that fascinating.
Ooh,
That's certainly one word for it.
Fascinating and possibly terrifying.
yeah.
The yeah, so uh, I don't want to, like, excuse me if I offend. I'm not intending to offend. Being a member of the disabled community, I'm sure you've experienced kind of this drive for people of the larger, more accepted social structure to minimize how things affect minority communities. Um,
Oh yeah.
um, I don't quite understand. So, I mean, like, this has happened to people of color before. This has happened to the disabled community before. Reports have been issued where, oh, this thing is affecting this community in this way. These many people are dying. It would cost this much to fix it. And that those have often been quashed, but rarely does a government go through the trouble of quashing a report that affects the entirety of its population. Um, I guess welcome to what it's like to be in a minority community, everybody in Florida.
Ooh.
Essentially, yeah. I mean, it's interesting because there are so many people in our country who are in one way or another compromised from chronic illness or other conditions, and we even pre-COVID, there are so many of us who have navigated the world constantly evaluating those risk reward kinds of levels when it comes to going to events or even something as simple as going to the grocery store in person. And now everyone is having to make those sort of micro calculations in their head every day, and everybody's health and well-being and potentially life is now in the hands of decision makers who often are very far removed from the reality of our everyday lives. Um, yeah, so a lot of us disabled folks are just kind of sitting back like, yeah, welcome to the club. It sucks here.
Maybe you can write a musical based on this.
That'll be the first song.
Welcome to the club. It sucks.
It sucks here.
You can what you I don't know the root of this musical style, but I'm thinking in my head I'm thinking of Mike Wachowski from Monsters Inc. when he starts soft
Yes.
shoeing. Um, da, 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 da. Anyway, sorry. Yeah, no.
Also, like, Mike Wazowski, such great representation for vision impaired people of the disabled community.
He just has
We love Mike.
he has no depth perception, and it comes out in his character. Um,
Yes, and in the song.
yeah. No, yeah, I find it fascinating. And so, interestingly, some other countries, including Brazil, and Brazil's the most famous one, in my opinion, have begun, and excuse me for wiping my eye constantly. I have a head cold, and it's not quite over yet. Um,
Oh.
it is not COVID though. I did get tested twice. Yeah, Brazil and the Brazilian government has actually brought up on charges several members of the executive leadership of the Brazilian government for mishandling the COVID crisis. And I am waiting. um, and I'm waiting.
Yeah.
Gonna wait forever.
I guess.
Yeah. Don't hold your breath.
I,
Don't hold your
I
breath.
mean, all right. So, in good news, the DOJ has come around to prosecuting the Philly Proud Boys, Isaiah Giddings, Brian Helian, and Freedom Vi, pictured below. They're in this picture on a thread on Twitter by Jordan Fisher. They're pictured with Zach Reel. Zach Reel had campaigned rather vigorously right after the January 6th insurrection incident to uh, say that and provide false info and narrative that he was not at the Capitol on January 6th. Um, there's there's several pieces of photographic evidence, however, that he was there, um, and I'm looking forward to Zach going to jail, but hopefully all these folks end up in jail for at least some amount of time. I'm not a big jail proponent, but I guess some people just really just need the kick in the pants.
It's what we've got to work with right now anyway in our current system.
Yeah.
Me and my husband make a lot of jokes about, prison abolition. And the one that we keep going back to is abolish all jails except for one that holds the cast of Glee.
Mm. Mm. Fair.
Leah Michelle, Matthew Morrison, they need to pay for their crimes.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. I've personally been toe to toe with some Philly Proud Boys. I'm a activist and a street medic in the Philly leftist community, and of course, none of these guys, individually by name, have I encountered, at least not that I know of. But it's always been interesting to me how the January 6th insurrection rolled around and a lot of people were like, how could this happen?
Those were the people that
How
weren't
could this
paying
happen?
attention for the
Right.
prior 12 months,
Right.
possibly the prior 12 years to that.
Those of us who have been on the ground and of course, in particular, POC, and even more in particular, BIPOC people, and now post-COVID, our AAPI people, have been seeing this coming miles and miles and miles away, and are, sad and angry, but not at all surprised at the way that groups in our country are behaving. I think what surprises a lot of us more than their behavior is the fact that they're actually being prosecuted for it. Like that's the surprise. That's what gets eyebrows raised in our communities.
That is the surprise. And so interesting things. There's been a campaign by the Proud Boys to say that they're not white supremacists, and also to say that that no Proud Boys were present at the insurrection, and that they're not.
I could not roll my eyes any harder.
And that they're not trying to foment insurrection. But included in the documents, the affidavit, there's an affidavit of text messages between Freedom Vi and Isaiah Giddings and another unnamed member of the group, because they're being identified as person number one, which means it's probably Zach. Wherein Giddings notes that none of the Philly Proud Boys had any Proud Boy gear on the entire event, just plain Trump supporters from beginning to end. So, just to be clear, folks, this is the Proud Boys conspiring to hide their political identity so that they looked like they're just Trump supporters. Because that's a thing you do when you're not worried about how your organization looks in the public eye.
Yeah, when you're totally innocent.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so yeah, no, but yeah, it is interesting that they're actually being prosecuted. One of the dangers, there's a couple of dangers that are cropping up. There's a YouTube commentator who's been publishing these documents, and like over the course of the past 12 months, and he was like, this isn't news, but what's interesting is that the mainstream media is reporting these kind of as if they were past events, that as if they have passed, that there's no longer any danger from them. And I hate to say it, but that's about as accurate as reporting climate change as a past event. Human-driven climate change is a thing right now that is happening.
Hmm.
There is an active effort to overthrow the government of the United States by certain people who were members of the government of the United States. They don't believe in the way that what the government has become. They don't believe that the society is or should be what it has become, inclusive of people like me and like my wonderful guests. And I often hear the rhetoric of, well, you're not being very inclusive if you're being exclusive of these people and their opinions. And I'm sorry, but I have to draw a line somewhere, and the line that I draw is when your way of believing means that you don't want me to be alive. I think I draw the line there. That's pretty much where I draw the line. Yeah.
Ugh, yeah, that makes me think of a lot of things because I'm a white woman, but I'm married to a black man, and I have to have conversations with my family where I remind them that this isn't just nothing. We have to be more aware. Like, I wouldn't call the police to my neighborhood if I didn't absolutely need to. And I can't think of any reason why I would absolutely need to, because they come after the fact. They do a bunch of nonsense paperwork and they help nobody. And there's just like a lot of like carryover, like, oh, we're all the same, right? No, that, like, just because you think that everybody is the same because that's your experience doesn't mean that everybody is actually treated the same and that everybody has the same opportunities. And just having that out in the world, like, you have to have those conversations.
So, interesting report that came out recently. Public health data experts have a new way to calculate the underreporting of people killed by police. Um,
Oh, I saw that one.
yeah,
Yeah.
and this came out during the recently in the world of criminology. For those that don't know, the world of criminology is the study of criminality and also the prosecution and abatement of crime. My production company participates in, or for the most part, participates in the American Society of Criminology's annual meetings as a provider of services for them. But each individual member of the ASC expresses their own opinions during the ASC. So that's just a clarity note there for folks that are watching. But the Lancet, the medical journal, published an article from criminologists, researchers, and found that between 1980 and 2018, there were deaths from police violence were misclassified by 55%. That's more than 17,000 people that died at the hands of police that were misclassified as some other cause of death. Um, yeah. So, yeah. Interesting. Yeah. Just related to your point. Not necessarily the safest place, even before this reclassification. Um, the likelihood that a person of color would die in an encounter with police was higher than any other group. Specifically, black people die at the hands of police in encounters with police at a higher rate than any other group, and that includes when you reverse the situation and count how many police officers are even injured and or killed um, at the hands of people of color or at the hands of the general public in encounters with the general public. Yeah, it's a relatively
That's
safe job.
it's crazy to me because I grew up in Northeast Philadelphia, and when I was a child, I remember so much press around. There was a cop that was murdered in, I believe, Philadelphia in like the 2000s, and it got so much press, and there was so much discussion about it, like in my community. And to grow up and learn that that's all kind of, you know, there's a bit of propaganda involved with all of that. And it's really interesting to grow into like knowing more about like prison abolition and being anti-cop, because there's so much going on in Philadelphia that nothing gets solved by any one idea. Like I've been reading a lot lately about there have been a slew of like robberies in businesses in Philadelphia, and I read an article recently that said that these would have been helped sooner if they had been reported to the police. And I'm like, well, what do they do in those situations? Oh, they help them figure out public safety things. It's like, oh, well, why don't you invest some of this police money in public safety and infrastructure and making these areas safer, making the people in those areas have the resources they need.
I'm not certain why that's even a controversial position. Yeah, I really have no idea. This report was reposted by Stop the FOP on Twitter, a Twitter account dedicated to stopping the fraternal orders of police. Um, and there's a reason there's even a Twitter account that says Stop the FOP. Like this idea that more policing solves more crime is ludicrous. There's not a single study of crime. There's not a single criminologist. I mean, this is like going back to the arguments about human involved climate change before the Trump era. There are even less scientists who believe that more policing stops more crime than believe that there isn't human involved climate change. Um,
It's so wild. I think that Americans have a problem with experts just in general. I think there's like a distrust of people who are academics and who like come from this more like knowledge, like privilege background, telling them this is the facts, even if those facts don't make sense in their experience. They can't see that, oh, maybe my experience is limited and sheltered. And maybe I should listen to the person who has spent 40 plus years of their life doing research on this very topic, as opposed to, my sister who posted TikTok about it.
I mean, okay, so I mean, there's always been this kind of back and forth between like the common knowledge and education in American society and in society in general. Like people want to be able to rely on their own senses and their own understanding of the world. Um, and this also goes to last episode. I talked about this a little bit. This is why I created this show and why we go from talking about the arts into current events and why I don't, I don't have a bunch of experts on every time. I do invite experts on sometimes, but artists, we as artists tend to investigate things from a pretty open place. Like we try and put ourselves in other people's shoes constantly. Like it's just what we do. Like we're trying to figure out what somebody else will see when we put something out there. Um, and I find that fascinating that there's a lot of people that don't bother to. I don't know if it's don't bother. I don't know. I don't. I, you know. I don't want to. I don't want to be like, oh, you're bad. I'm not saying you're a bad person if you don't try to expand your understanding of the world. Um, I'm just saying that there is another way.
Right.
You can, just imagine for a second that you're not you, that you're me, or that you're, one of the other people that you encounter every day. Even if you encounter people that are mostly like you can imagine that you're a person that you has never encountered. Like, you can imagine you're one of those, a member of that tribe that exists on an island in it's the southern Indian Ocean, I believe, that they're super uh, what's the word for it? Agoraphobic. They
Agoraphobic.
agoraphobic. Thank you. And they don't let anybody come onto the island. Literally nobody. Like
Good.
like there's a there was, I think, about 5 years ago was the last time somebody tried to go to the island, and it was
It's a
a
missionary.
missionary, and they killed him on the beach.
Yep.
Great. But you can imagine that you are that person. Like not the missionary, but you can imagine you're a member of that tribe. Um, you've never met them. You don't know what they're like, but you can imagine. And I would hope that everybody has an imagination. Um, I don't know. I don't know. Uh,
Oh.
but yeah, so like I think that it's important that we as artists, we've always acted as that intermediary between kind of educated and common sense, quote unquote, and just this. Hopefully, as part of this show, we can provide a little bit of a translation between those two things. Although sometimes I get lost in what I think should be common sense. Like I brought up earlier, is it not uh, as well known as I would think that the culture of tipping is a holdover from slavery and from Jim Crow. Like I recently this morning had to explain that to somebody again. I didn't know that wasn't a well-known thing. Um,
I don't know if it's so much that something is or isn't common sense. I think what it really comes down to, because a lot of the time, once you bring something like that up, people are like, okay, yeah, that makes sense. I think the issue is more that a lot of people who come from a place of privilege just aren't thinking about things like that on a day-to-day basis. It just isn't a part of sort of the background noise in their head as they go through their day.
so I get what you're saying. I mean, yeah, it is if it's not a part, but is it such a chore to actually think about it?
Well, they're busy counting their money and their cryptocurrency. Jeez.
I mean, I have some cryptocurrency. I don't actually count it. Uh, uh, it doesn't actually exist, so I don't know.
So I sometimes have to remind myself that I personally talk a lot about the value of empathy and the value of putting yourself in someone else's shoes as a way to expand your understanding of the world that we live in. But and this is certainly not to be dismissive or make excuses of anybody. I mean, at the end of the day, it's sort of our job as human beings to make an effort to empathize with the people around us, including and especially people that we do not understand. But it is also occasionally useful to remember that there are moments when empathy is painful. there are moments when it is so drastically, cosmically easier to not empathize, because doing so puts us in a position to share another person's pain in a way that can be uncomfortable. And so many people shy away from even the smallest bit of discomfort and personal friction and moral friction.
So this
You
is
know, there's
a
this.
sorry to
No, go ahead.
this is a kind of a direction we've been investigating for a week or so now. Just because this kind of came up on last week's episode as well. Um, the it's interesting that you frame it that way, that the act of being empathetic to somebody, of putting yourself in somebody else's shoes, can be painful for a variety of reasons to yourself. Um, and perhaps that's where the greatest disconnect I feel in trying to be empathetic with people who are experiencing that a lack of empathy or a lack of ability to recognize something because of that discomfort. So, and this goes to where I'm going with this is there is the I suppose the extreme example would be the folks that accuse people of doing things or make a big deal out of things by othering people and then accusing them of doing what it is they do themselves. And specifically, I'm referencing Josh Duggar, who was accused of possessing child pornography, and which a lot of posts have now noted the correct term is evidence of child rape, and you know, he was head of Family First, I think is the name of it. Um, and Family First is an organization that was founded on the idea of uh, making transgender and gay lifestyle illegal in order to quote unquote protect the children.
Protect children.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, all right. So, just to circle back here, then if I'm putting myself in his shoes, he's uncomfortable with his own identity, and therefore he's experiencing an extreme form of trauma when trying to wrestle with that identity, and therefore he lashes out against it. I mean, I don't know. You're making faces.
Yeah, I'm a face maker, to be honest.
I mean, I assume when people make faces that they have an opinion, but
I just think that man's gross. I have a hard time being empathetic to people because I put a lot of my empathy into the community that I'm a part of. Like something I've had to grapple with this year is you can't take care of everybody. You can't help everybody in all the ways that people need to be helped. And therefore, I like kudos on you for trying to wrap your head around like what the heck is behind a person like that. But I'm gonna sit here and make a
there's
face.
so many of them though. There's so many.
Yeah.
Like, recent, like if you just go by like numbers of people that are recently reported to have, been involved in something of this nature. And I'm not just talking about child abuse. I'm talking about, all kinds of things, human trafficking, illegal prostitution, there's any number of, or I mean, and not to minimize human trafficking or illegal prostitution or child abuse, but I mean, even the act of like in Kentucky, where business owners ordered their employees to go to stay at their workstations or be fired with a tornado hitting the building, like like that's the same. I mean, I feel like that's the same mechanism. I feel like that's the same um, mechanism. Yeah, that would cause somebody to. I don't have that mechanism. I can't empathize with it. I can't figure it out. I'm not trying to figure it out for any other reason other than it seems to be so prevalent. It seems to be, like 20 something percent of the population.
I no, to get real personal here, I am a CSA survivor, and I care a lot about prevention and care, and trying to figure out as a people why this happens and why it happens so much. And unfortunately, I don't want to say unfortunately, it's difficult, but that does involve looking at root causes, and it involves looking at um, societal structures that are currently in place that allow this to continue to happen. And the uncomfortable truth is that some of that requires a level of empathy with abusers, and it requires a level of empathy with people who um, it is much easier to just flat out condemn. And of course we condemn them, but it has to come with this measure of an attempt at human understanding, because what we're doing right now, the way that we're handling it right now, isn't working. And on a fundamental level, there's often this conversation that's had where somebody who is in the public eye, whether it's a politician or a celebrity, or a very rich person in like a religious community or something like that, it's revealed that they are an abuser. The response is, well, people like this should die. And we have to ask ourselves, if that's the narrative, if that's our response as a people, then what is, a young person who begins to experience like intrusive thoughts of minor attraction? Like, where are they going to go if they think the response is going to be violence?
Mm.
They're going to bottle it up. They're never going to tell anybody. And then at some point, they're going to hurt somebody, and they're going to panic. And it's going to be so much worse than if they had been able at 15 or 16 to say, I'm having these intrusive thoughts that scare me, I need help. But we don't create space for that. What we do is we say, well, these people are just inhuman and we should just kill them. And it's hard. It's hard to empathize on a human level with the people who hurt us. But there are moments where it has to be done, where it's the only way forward.
Yeah. Um, I hate to wrap on such a somber note, but it is 11:02, and I would like to wrap up the broadcast. Thank you for that. I think you're correct, and I unfortunately cannot find a way personally to empathize with people who want me dead. Other than that, I think there's room for empathy for pretty much anybody else. Um,
Yeah.
Other than that, I'm okay. Yeah, there's a lot we didn't get to today, but I want to thank my special guests, and thank you for coming on the coffee break chat. Thank you for talking with me today. Thank you for going down these rabbit holes with me. I really appreciate it. I hope that one or more people were at least a little informed by this conversation. Any last thoughts, any wrap ups, anything that you want to drop in before we close out the broadcast?
Give money to marginalized communities directly. You don't have to go through a charity. Put money in the hands of people who need it.
Awesome.
Yeah, literally just hand your neighbor a $20 bill.
Honest.
Just do it.
Awesome.
Just hand your neighbor a $20 bill.
Great ideas. Thank you so much. Thank you again. I'm gonna go to just a one shot of me, and thank you for joining me. And feel free to stick around in the meeting space. I will be done with the broadcast in a moment, and if you have any other thoughts or want to talk anymore. Thank you again. Thank you, as always, to the folks who are watching this live. Really appreciate you. If you wouldn't mind, just hit that like button underneath this broadcast wherever you're watching it. If you want to support us a little bit more, hit the subscribe button. You'll get a notification anytime we go live. And if you want to support us even more than that, consider our Patreon, patreon.com/lightthiefproductions. We're going to go on a little bit of a holiday break here. We won't be back until if I recall, 5th. Yes, the 5th of January. So we're going to be on a little bit of a break, just 2 weeks. Give us some time to rest and relax and recuperate, get over this cold, get some rest in our bones. And we will be back on January 5th with more special guests, more news and information. And there's lots of these topics that I'm sure won't be wrapped up before January 5th, so we'll be back to talk about more of those. Please check out A Queer Christmas Carol and check out the Painted Mug Cafe. Meg has posted the links in our Facebook chat, and we'll post more links on our other social media throughout the rest of the day. Feel free to share this broadcast with your friends on your social media. And again, thank you for tuning in, and tune in on the 5th for more Coffee Break Chat. Thanks. Have a good couple of weeks, everybody.